My name is Heidi Gray, 34 years old, and I built my financial consulting firm from scratch after that nightmare family dinner in Indianapolis 10 years ago. My sister's husband Quentin called me a thief right to my face, accusing me of stealing from our family's savings. Instead of defending me, my sister Pamela slapped me hard across the cheek and screamed for me to get out. My mom Rita joined in, shoving me toward the door like I was some intruder. I stood there stunned, the room spinning, but I didn't fight back. I just grabbed my coat and walked out into the night. Silence my only response. At family dinner, my sister slapped me and kicked me out after her husband called me a thief. My mom joined in and shoved me outside. I left in silence. Just 1 week later, I did something that made the whole house fall. Within minutes, my phone blew up with 36 calls, and she was at my door. Before I get to my story, I want to know what time and what city you are listening in. I'm happy to know how far my story goes. Growing up in Indianapolis, Pamela Lane and I were inseparable. She was 4 years older, but we navigated everything together in our modest neighborhood, where summers meant pickup basketball games at the local park, and winters brought sledding down the snowy hills near Eagle Creek Reservoir. Our bond felt unbreakable, especially when the cracks in our parents' marriage started showing. I was 10 when the fights escalated, Rita yelling at Robert over money and his late nights at work. By the time I turned 14, Dad packed his bags and left for good, moving to a small apartment across town. Mom fell apart, spending days in bed, barely managing to get up for her shift at the hospital. Pamela, at 18, stepped up without complaint. She drove me to school in her beat-up Ford, made sure we had microwave dinners when Mom couldn't cook, and even helped with my algebra homework despite her own community college classes. We'd sit on the front porch after dark, sharing dreams under the Indiana stars. Mine was to build a financial firm that helped families like ours avoid the debt traps that tore us apart. Hers was simpler, wanting us to stay close and maybe start a business together someday. Pamela and Heidi's financial empire, she'd joke, waving her hands like we were already tycoons, when I got bullied in middle school for my hand-me-down clothes. Pamela marched right into the principal's office and demanded action. Those kids backed off fast, and she taught me to stand tall. Her protection made me feel safe in a world that suddenly wasn't. Pamela turned down a scholarship to Purdue to stay local and help with Mom. She enrolled at IUPUI instead, juggling classes and part-time jobs at a downtown cafe. I threw myself into studies, earning a full ride to Indiana University. When my acceptance letter came, Pamela was the first I told. She hugged me tight, her pride shining through even as she worried about me leaving. "This is your ticket out," she'd say. "Make it count for both of us." During my sophomore year, Pamela met Quentin Lane in her business class. He had that polished charm, with slick hair and stories of his family's real estate deals. Their relationship moved fast, dates turning into weekends away. At first, Quentin seemed supportive, joining our family dinners and laughing at Pamela's jokes. But I noticed the shifts. Small at first, he'd question my closeness to Pamela, saying things like, "You two are like twins, but she's starting her own life now." Pamela started canceling our sister hangouts, claiming Quentin needed her for some event or another. Quentin's manipulation crept in through money talk. He'd whisper to Pamela about how I was draining the family with my college costs, even though I had scholarships. Once, he suggested I was hiding extra cash from Mom's savings, planting seeds of doubt. Pamela defended me at first, but Quentin's constant drip of comments wore her down. "You're too soft on her," he'd say. "She's using you as a crutch." I tried talking to Pamela alone, but she'd brush it off. "He's just protective." She'd insist. "You don't understand, because you're still in school." The changes accelerated after they got engaged. Quentin pushed for a fancy ring that stretched Pamela's budget. and he started isolating her from me. Our porch talks vanished, replaced by his plans for their future. He'd mock my financial dreams, saying, "That's cute, but real success comes from connections, not books." Pamela echoed him more each time, her eyes hardening when I shared my progress. Quentin had twisted our bond, turning my sister into someone who saw me as competition rather than family. I wanted to fight it, but the distance grew, setting the stage for that explosive dinner years later. Back in Indianapolis, the tension with Quentin finally boiled over at a family dinner. It was during my last visit home after college graduation. I had flown in to celebrate with Mom and Pamela, excited to share my plans for starting a financial consulting firm in Seattle. The table was set with Mom's pot roast and mashed potatoes, a familiar spread that usually brought comfort. Quentin sat at the head, dominating the conversation with tales of his latest real estate flip. Their relationship moved fast, dates turning into weekends away. Their relationship moved fast, dates turning into weekends away. Pamela hung on his every word, her engagement ring catching the light as she nodded along. As dessert came out, Quentin turned his attention to me. "So, Heidi," he said with a smirk, leaning back in his chair, "heard you're moving to Seattle to chase some big finance dream. That's ambitious." I smiled politely, sensing the edge in his voice. "Yeah, I've got some solid leads. The market there's booming for consultants helping small businesses with debt management." Pamela glanced at him before chiming in. "Sounds risky. Quentin's doing great with properties here. Why not stay and join us?" The talk shifted to family finances, and that's when Quentin dropped his bomb. "You know, Rita," he said, turning to Mom, "I've been looking over the old accounts. Seems like some money's missing from that inheritance fund your ex left for the girls." His eyes quickly locked on me. "And Heidi's the one who's always been good with numbers." "What are you implying?" I asked, my fork pausing midair. Pamela's face hardened. "He's saying you took it. Heidi, you've been spending like crazy on school stuff." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "That's ridiculous. I haven't touched any family money. My scholarships covered everything." Quentin leaned forward, his tone accusatory. "Come on, we all know you've been resentful since the divorce. Maybe you thought you deserved extra." Mom shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak up. Pamela stood suddenly, her chair scraping the floor. "You're lying. Quentin's right. You've always been sneaky with cash." Before I could respond, she slapped me hard across the face, the sting sharp and immediate. "Get out," she yelled, pointing to the door. "We don't need a thief in this house." Mom rose then, her hands trembling as she grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the exit. "You're causing trouble. Heidi, just go." The door slammed behind me, rain starting to fall in the cool Indiana night. I stood on the porch, cheek burning, heart pounding from the betrayal. My own sister and mother had turned on me based on Quentin's lies. That night, I booked the first flight back to Seattle. I didn't call or text. The distance felt necessary, a wall to protect myself from the pain. In Seattle, I rented a tiny apartment downtown and threw myself into building my firm, starting with freelance gigs for local startups. I networked at coffee shops and attended finance meetups. The rain in Seattle mirrored my mood, but it also washed away the hurt over time. I secured my first client, a small tech company needing debt restructuring advice. And word spread. Within months, I had enough to hire an assistant and expand. Shannon Pike became my rock during those early days. We met at a Women's Business Network event, and she saw through my tough exterior. "You're carrying something heavy," she said over coffee one afternoon. I confided in her about the dinner, and she listened without judgment. "Channel it into your work," she advised. "Don't let them define you." Her support kept me going through the long nights crunching numbers and pitching ideas. My firm grew, specializing in helping families avoid financial pitfalls like the ones that destroyed mine. But the scar from that slap lingered, a reminder of how quickly trust could shatter. Over the next decade in Seattle, I built a life from the ground up. That dinner in Indianapolis, where Pamela slapped me and Mom shoved me out, became a scar I carried but refused to let define me. My financial consulting firm took root in a cramped office space near Pike Place Market. I started with small clients, mostly family-owned businesses drowning in debt. Late nights analyzing spreadsheets and cold calling potential investors became my routine. My first big win was landing a contract with a local restaurant chain, saving them from bankruptcy with a tailored debt repayment plan. Word spread. And soon I had a team of 10. Then 20. Working out of a sleek downtown office. By year 5, I bought a modern condo overlooking Puget Sound, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the water that calmed my restless nights. I tried to keep ties with home, though. I sent birthday gifts for Pamela's kids, Tracy and Victor, hoping to stay in their lives despite the rift. Packages of books and science kits went out every year, but they came back unopened, stamped "Return to Sender." Pamela's silence hurt more than I expected. Mom called a few times, her voice hesitant over the line. She'd ask about my work, never mentioning that night, and I'd keep it short. "I'm fine, Mom," I'd say, dodging her attempts to reconnect. The pain was too raw to pretend otherwise. About 6 years in, Mom texted that our grandfather had passed. I flew back to Indianapolis for the funeral, hoping for a chance to mend things. At the cemetery, Pamela stood with Quentin, their kids clinging to her side. Tracy, maybe 4 then, looked at me with curious eyes, but Pamela pulled her away before I could speak. Quentin avoided my gaze, his jaw tight. I approached Mom after the service, my voice low. "Can we talk about what happened?" She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Not now, Heidi. It's too much." Pamela didn't even look at me as they left, her arm around Victor. I stood alone by the grave, realizing reconciliation wasn't coming. Back in Seattle, Shannon Pike kept me grounded. We'd meet for coffee at a cozy spot near my office, where she'd push me to open up. "You're not your family's mistakes," she'd say, her voice firm but kind. She was a marketing consultant who'd faced her own family drama, and her advice hit home. "Focus on what you're building, not what you lost." I took it to heart, pouring my energy into my firm. We expanded to help mid-sized companies, offering seminars on financial planning that drew crowds. My name started appearing in local business journals. A small feature here, a profile there. I wasn't chasing fame, but the recognition felt like proof I was more than the thief they'd called me. The loneliness crept in, though. Late nights in my condo, I'd stare at the sound, wondering if Pamela ever regretted that slap. I dated briefly, a tech founder named Brian who understood my drive but not my guarded heart. It fizzled after a year. Shannon noticed the weight I carried. "You're allowed to let go," she said one evening over wine. "They don't get to own you." Her words stuck, and I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Susan Reyes, who helped me unpack the betrayal. "It's not about forgiving them yet," she said. "It's about not letting their choices break you." Therapy became my safe space, a place to rebuild myself without their shadows. By year 10, my firm had gone national, with clients in 5 states and a staff of 50. I spoke at industry conferences, sharing strategies to avoid financial ruin. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family's accusations had fueled my expertise. I'd built a life I was proud of. But the calls from Mom slowed to a trickle, and Pamela's silence was absolute. Shannon kept me focused, reminding me I didn't need their approval to thrive. Still, a part of me braced for the day they'd come back, expecting something from the life I'd fought to create. 10 years after leaving Indianapolis, my phone rang with an unknown number. I ignored it at first, focused on a client meeting in my Seattle office overlooking Elliott Bay, but the calls kept coming, 36 in total, within minutes. I finally picked up, and Pamela's voice cut through the line, shaky and urgent. "We need to talk. Heidi, it's an emergency." My stomach nodded, but I agreed to meet them at my condo that evening. When I pulled into the driveway, there they were, Pamela, Quentin, and the kids, Tracy and Victor, standing by a packed SUV with suitcases spilling out. Pamela looked worn, her once perfect hair frizzy and her eyes red from crying. Quentin shifted awkwardly, his polished charm replaced by a defeated slump. Tracy, 10 now, clutched a stuffed bear, while 8-year-old Victor kicked at the gravel, looking bored and confused. The sight of my niece and nephew hit me hard. They were strangers to me because of that night. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice steady as I stepped out of the car. Quentin spoke first, his tone forced casual. "We've had some rough times. Heidi, the real estate market crashed, and I lost my job in a company merger." Pamela nodded, wiping her eyes. "The bank foreclosed on our house last month. We're basically homeless." Tracy piped up then. "We stayed in a motel last night. It had a pool. But Dad said we couldn't swim," Victor added, "and the Wi-Fi sucked." Their innocence cut through the tension. But I stayed focused. "So you drove all the way here," I said. Crossing my arms, Pamela stepped closer. "We thought families should stick together. You have space." "Right. This big place in Seattle." Quentin chimed in. "Just temporary. A few months until I land something. The kids need stability. Schools here are great." I glanced at Tracy and Victor, feeling a pang for what I'd missed, but the memories flooded back. Quentin's accusation, Pamela's slap, Mom's shove. "Why now?" I asked. After 10 years of silence, Pamela's face crumpled. "We were wrong that night. Quentin was stressed, and I overreacted. Mom feels awful too. She's back in Indianapolis, but she told me to reach out. I didn't buy it." The 36 calls felt desperate, not apologetic, Quentin added. "Look, we're broke. No savings left after the mortgage payments piled up. Bankruptcy's next if we don't get help." Tracy tugged at Pamela's sleeve. "Aunt Heidi, do you have a room for us?" Her question stung, reminding me of the family I'd lost. I let them inside for a moment, against my better judgment. The kids marveled at the view of the sound, while Pamela paced the living room. "This place is amazing," she said, glancing at my awards on the shelf. "You've done well." Quentin nodded. "Yeah. We saw your firm in a business article last year. Figured you'd understand hard times." I sat them down, my mind racing through the past. "That dinner wasn't just a mistake," I said. "You accused me of stealing, slapped me, and Mom shoved me out. You cut me off completely." Pamela teared up. "I was protecting my family. Quentin convinced me I cut her off. He manipulated you, and you let him. Now you're here because you're broke." Quentin bristled. "Watch it. We're asking for help, not judgment." The kids sensed the shift, Victor hiding behind Pamela. I took a breath, facing the ghosts of that night. Part of me wanted to slam the door again, but seeing Tracy and Victor made it harder. Still, I wouldn't let them walk over me. "What exactly do you want?" I asked, ready for the ask that would test everything. I decided to offer limited help, but with strict conditions. The next morning, I had my assistant arrange a furnished 3-bedroom apartment in a decent Seattle neighborhood near good schools. It cost me about $2,000 a month, and I agreed to cover it for 6 months. I also emailed Quentin some contacts from my network finance firms looking for experienced real estate pros, but I made it clear in a text to Pamela, "This is temporary. No contact unless it's an emergency, and if there's any more drama. It's done, Pamela replied quickly, thanking me profusely. We'll make it work, she wrote. The kids are thrilled. Quentin's already reaching out to your leads. I didn't respond, focusing instead on my day client meetings and a seminar on debt strategies. Shannon called that afternoon. You're being generous, she said. But watch your back. They've hurt you before. I assured her I had boundaries in place. No staying at my condo. No family dinners. Just the basics to get them stable. A few weeks after they moved in, things seemed quiet. I got updates from my assistant on the lease payments, and Pamela sent a photo of Tracy and Victor in their new rooms, smiling with unpacked boxes around them. It tugged at me, seeing my niece and nephew settling in. Maybe this could lead to something positive for them, even if not for us. But then the whispers started. A mutual acquaintance from Indianapolis, now in Seattle, mentioned hearing rumors at a networking event. Quentin's been telling people you manipulated the family finances back home, she said, saying you pushed them out to take control. I froze, the old accusation echoing. Thief then, manipulator now. I dug deeper. Calling a couple of shared contacts, one confirmed Quentin had spread the story during a job interview, claiming I had influenced Mom to cut them off from inheritance funds. It was a lie. I hadn't touched any family money since leaving, but Quentin was using it to paint himself as the victim, probably to explain their sudden move. Pamela must have known, or at least turned a blind eye. That evening, I confronted them over a video call. Why are you spreading lies again? I demanded. Quentin denied it at first. Just venting, he said. People ask questions. Pamela jumped in. He's stressed. Heidi, cut him some slack. We're grateful for the apartment. But their defensiveness confirmed it. Tracy appeared in the background, waving hi. But I ended the call abruptly. My hands shook as I blocked their numbers. Enough was enough. I contacted my lawyer the next day to terminate the lease support after the current month. No more payments, no extensions. I also alerted the contacts I'd given Quentin, explaining the situation briefly without details. One called back, saying they'd passed on him after hearing inconsistencies in his story. Shannon met me for lunch, her support unwavering. You're doing the right thing, she said. They haven't changed. Protect what you've built. The fallout came fast. Pamela tried emailing from a new address, begging for more time. The kids need this, she wrote. Don't punish them for our mistakes. But it was the same pattern, using the children as leverage while Quentin poisoned the well. I didn't reply. Mom called from Indianapolis, her voice pleading. They're struggling. Heidi, can't you help a little longer? I told her no. They crossed the line again. This is permanent. Cutting them off completely felt final, a weight lifting even as it ached. I changed my locks, updated my security, and focused on my firm. No more gifts for Tracy and Victor. No more wondering. The 10 years of silence had taught me self-reliance, and this betrayal sealed it. Quentin's Wukong had backfired, costing them potential jobs and my support. I heard through a distant relative that their apartment lease ended soon, forcing them into a motel. But I was done carrying their chaos. Months after cutting them off, the consequences unfolded for Pamela and Quentin. Word got back through a distant cousin in Indianapolis that their temporary apartment lease had expired without renewal from me. They bounced to a cheap motel on the outskirts of Seattle, the kind with flickering neon signs and thin walls. Quentin's job leads dried up fast once my contacts heard about his rumor spreading. One firm even blacklisted him after verifying the inconsistencies in his stories. Pamela lost her part-time gig at a local cafe when customers complained about her distracted attitude. Their finances spiraled, leading to a bankruptcy filing in King County Court. Chapter 7. The kind that wipes out assets but stains your credit for years. The judge ruled quickly, forcing them to sell Quentin's old SUV and what little they had left. Social isolation hit harder. Old friends from Indianapolis stopped answering calls, tired of the drama and excuses. In Seattle, neighbors whispered about the family who showed up broke and bitter. Pamela tried posting on social media for support, but comments turned ugly. People called out Quentin's lies. Tracy and Victor struggled in school, switching classes mid-year and facing questions about why they moved so suddenly. Pamela blamed me in voicemails I never returned, but the truth leaked out. Their marriage cracked under the pressure. Quentin started staying out late, and arguments echoed through motel walls. A mutual acquaintance mentioned divorce papers being discussed, with custody battles looming. Pamela moved back to Indianapolis with the kids eventually, crashing with Mom in her small apartment. Quentin stayed behind, scraping by on odd jobs, his charm long gone. Mom reached out once more, her voice frail over the phone. "You've destroyed them, Heidi." But I stood firm. They did this to themselves. The betrayal from that dinner night sealed it. No more chances. Shannon celebrated my decision over dinner one evening. "You've protected your peace," she said. "That's what matters." My firm thrived without the distraction, landing major contracts with national chains. I spoke at more conferences, sharing stories of financial recovery that mirrored my own escape from family toxic ties. Looking back, setting those boundaries saved me. Pamela and Quentin's downfall showed the real cost of manipulation and betrayal. Bankruptcy court stripped their facade, social circles abandoned them, and their marriage teetered on collapse. For Con Gia, the lesson is clear: protect yourself with firm boundaries. Family doesn't mean enduring abuse or lies. Stand your ground, even if it means walking away forever. It's not revenge, it's survival. And in the end, building your own life is the ultimate win.